Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the window of the exploration ship Aurora. His hands shook as he stared at the massive alien ship that had just appeared in Earth's orbit. The thing was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen. It stretched across the sky like a floating city, its surface covered in strange patterns that seemed to move and breathe. "Sir, we're getting a message," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from his station. His voice cracked with excitement and fear. "It's coming through on all frequencies." Jake turned away from the window and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their computers. Red lights flashed everywhere and alarms buzzed softly in the background. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing symbols that meant nothing to human eyes. Then the symbols changed, becoming words in perfect English. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are the hegemony. We have come to welcome you to galactic civilization." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her science station. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though until today that had been purely theoretical. "Captain, the translation is perfect, too perfect. How do they know our language so well?" Jake didn't have an answer. Nobody did. The message continued. "Your species shows promise despite its primitive nature. We will send representatives to your world to begin the integration process." "Primitive," muttered Chief Engineer Matt Davis. "That's nice of them." Jake opened a communication channel to Earth Command. Within minutes, Admiral Cole Henderson's weathered face appeared on the screen. The old man looked tired and worried. "Jake, are you seeing this thing up there?" the Admiral asked. "Hard to miss, sir. It's about 10 kilometers long and looks like it's alive. We've got reports coming in from around the globe. Similar ships have appeared over every major city. They're not attacking, just sitting there watching us." Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward. "Admiral, we need to be careful here. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. The fact that they're talking suggests they want something else." "What do you think they want, Doctor?" "Based on their message, they seem to see us as a new species that needs guidance. They called themselves the hegemony, which suggests they're some kind of ruling body over multiple species." Admiral Henderson nodded slowly. "The United Nations is calling an emergency session. They want all available experts there in 6 hours." The alien ship remained silent for the next few hours, giving humanity time to panic and prepare. News reports showed crowds gathering in cities around the world, some praying, others celebrating, many just staring at the sky in wonder. Jake and his team were ordered back to Earth immediately. As the Aurora descended through the atmosphere, Jake could see the alien ship more clearly. It really did look alive, with sections that pulsed with soft light and surfaces that rippled like water. The United Nations building in New York had never seen such chaos. Representatives from every nation crowded into the assembly hall, while outside, reporters and protesters filled the streets. Jake and his team were escorted to special seats near the front, where they joined other scientists and military officials. Then the aliens came down. Jake watched in amazement as a small ship detached from the massive vessel overhead. It moved silently through the air and landed gently in the plaza outside the UN building. The craft opened like a flower and several figures emerged. The leader was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in complex patterns, and when it spoke, the sound came from speakers that appeared in the air around it. "I am Vexter of the Hegemony Council," the being said. "I speak for 12 species and thousands of worlds." Behind Vexter came other aliens. Jake saw creatures that looked like giant insects, beings made of flowing metal, and things that defied description. All of them carried themselves with the confidence of those who had never met equals. The alien delegation entered the UN building surrounded by nervous security guards. Jake found himself holding his breath as Vexter approached the podium. "People of Earth," Vexter began, its voice echoing strangely in the Great Hall. "Your world is young and your species has much to learn. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, filled with wonders and terrors beyond your current understanding." The crystal being gestured, and holographic images filled the air above the assembly. Jake saw star maps showing thousands of worlds, mighty cities that floated in space, and fleets of ships that made Earth's technology look like stone tools. For 2,000 years, the hegemony has brought peace and order to this sector of the galaxy, Vexter continued. We have guided young species like yourselves from primitive beginnings to galactic citizenship. Dr. Lisa Carter leaned forward in her seat, studying the alien's every word and gesture. Something bothered her about the way Vexter spoke, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. Earth will be welcomed into our confederation as a junior member, the alien announced. You will contribute raw materials and labor, and in return, we will share knowledge and technology appropriate to your level of development. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Junior member, raw materials and labor. The words didn't sound like an invitation to equality. Jake noticed that several scientists in the audience looked uncomfortable. Dr. Amy Foster, a famous archaeologist, was whispering urgently to her colleagues. She had spent years studying ancient ruins that didn't fit with accepted theories of human development. As Vexter continued its presentation, Jake realized that the aliens saw humanity as children who needed to be taught and guided. They spoke of Earth's recent emergence and humanity's primitive but promising nature. What they didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Dr. Foster's research had uncovered evidence of something impossible. Buried deep in Earth's ancient past were signs of a civilization that shouldn't exist, structures millions of years old that showed signs of advanced technology, genetic markers in human DNA that suggested impossible evolutionary leaps. The aliens looked at Earth and saw a young world ready to be shaped and guided. They had no idea that they might be wrong about everything. Commander Ryan Torres stepped onto the alien ship for the first time and felt like a child entering a giant's house. Everything was too big, too strange, too advanced. The walls seemed to breathe around him, and lights moved through them like blood through veins. "Welcome aboard the living ship Harmony," said the alien guide, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms. "I am Branch Singer Zethko. I will show you to Nexus Prime." Ryan and his team of 12 humans followed the alien through corridors that changed shape as they walked. Dr. Kate Sullivan, their language expert, kept taking notes on everything she saw. Chief Engineer Matt Davis touched every surface he could reach, his face full of wonder and confusion. "The ship is alive," Matt whispered to Ryan. "Not just like a computer that thinks. It's actually alive. I can feel it breathing." The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days. During that time, the humans learned more about the hegemony than years of radio signals could have taught them. The Alien Confederation ruled over 12 different species spread across thousands of worlds. Each species had joined the hegemony at different times, always as junior members who worked their way up over centuries. "Your species will start at level 1 citizenship," explained Zethko as they sat in the ship's dining area. "You will provide raw materials from your world and workers for our projects. After perhaps 200 years, if you prove worthy, you may advance to level 2. Ryan bit his tongue to keep from responding. 200 years of being servants before they could even hope for better treatment. The other humans at the table looked just as angry, but they kept quiet. Dr. Kate Sullivan studied the writing on the walls around them. The symbols looked familiar somehow, though she couldn't say why. "Zethko, how old is the hegemony's written language?" "Our common tongue was created 4,000 years ago, when the first species joined together. Before that, each species had its own primitive writing." "And before the hegemony, were there other civilizations in this part of the galaxy?" The tree-like alien's branches rustled, which Ryan had learned meant uncertainty. "There are ruins from an older time, the progenitors we call them. They vanished long before any of our species developed space travel, very mysterious, very advanced. We have learned much from studying their remains." That night in their assigned quarters, the human team gathered to talk privately. Matt had spent the day working with alien engineers, and his excitement was obvious. "You're not going to believe this," he said, keeping his voice low. "Their technology is amazing, but it's not entirely alien. Some of the basic principles, the way energy flows through their systems, it's similar to theories that human scientists have been working on." Dr. Kate Sullivan spread her notes across the table. "I've been studying their historical records, the ones they're willing to share. They keep mentioning these progenitors, this ancient civilization that left ruins everywhere. But here's the strange part: some of the symbols I've seen on progenitor ruins look like they could be related to ancient human writing systems. That's impossible, said Lieutenant Carol Webb, their communications officer. Humans never left Earth until 50 years ago. I know it sounds crazy, Kate continued, but I've been comparing the symbols to archaeological finds from Earth. There are similarities that can't be coincidence. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Amy Foster was having the day of her life. The discovery in Antarctica was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The ice drilling team had found the structure completely by accident while looking for climate data from ancient ice cores. It's huge, she told Admiral Henderson over the video call. The structure goes down at least 2 kilometers into the ice. The materials are unlike anything we've ever seen. They don't match any known compounds, but they're definitely artificial. How old is it? Asked the Admiral. That's the impossible part. Based on the ice layers above it, this thing has been buried for at least 3 million years. But sir, the architecture, the proportions, they're designed for beings about our size. Human size. Amy led her team deeper into the structure each day. The passages were perfectly preserved by the ice, and strange lights began glowing as they explored deeper. Technology responded to their presence in ways that made no scientific sense. Look at this, said Dr. Peter Clark, her second in command. He placed his hand on a smooth panel, and suddenly the entire corridor lit up with soft blue light. It's reading our DNA somehow. It knows we're human. Amy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. Peter, run a full genetic scan on anything that responds to us. I want to know what this place is looking for in our DNA. Back on the alien ship, Matt Davis was working with a hegemony engineer named Crixna, an insect-like being with 4 arms and compound eyes. They were trying to repair a piece of ancient progenitor technology that the aliens had found but never been able to activate. Your species has unusual intuition for energy patterns, Crixna said, clicking its mandibles. Most new species require decades of training to understand even basic principles. Matt studied the device, which looked like a crystalline sculpture that hummed with internal power. Without thinking, he reached out and touched a specific point on its surface. The device suddenly blazed to life, projecting complex holographic displays that filled the room. Crixna stepped back in shock. Impossible. That device has been inactive for 800 years. No hegemony engineer has ever been able to activate it. I don't know how I knew where to touch it, Matt said, staring at his hand. It just felt right. News of the incident spread quickly through the alien ship. Within hours, Ryan found himself summoned to meet with higher-ranking hegemony officials. They looked at him and his team with new interest and something that might have been worry. Your engineer shows remarkable aptitude, said a floating jellyfish-like creature that spoke through bioelectric pulses. We would like to test other humans with progenitor artifacts. Dr. Kate Sullivan spent that evening going through every piece of hegemony historical data she could access. The story that emerged painted a picture of a galaxy that had once been ruled by a mysterious ancient civilization. The progenitors had built wonders that the current species could barely understand, then vanished without a trace. But the more she read, the more she noticed inconsistencies, dates that didn't match. References to progenitor colonies in star systems that the hegemony claimed had never been inhabited. Most disturbing of all, descriptions of progenitor beings that sounded remarkably like humans. Ryan, she said quietly as they prepared for sleep, I think we need to contact Earth immediately. Something is very wrong here, and I think Dr. Foster's discovery in Antarctica might be connected to all of this. Commander Torres looked out the small window of their quarters at the stars streaming past. Somewhere behind them was Earth, where ancient secrets were being uncovered in the ice. Somewhere ahead was Nexus Prime, capital of a galactic civilization that might have built itself on humanity's forgotten legacy. He had the growing feeling that the hegemony's assessment of humanity as young and primitive was about to be proven very, very wrong. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in the middle of the largest library she had ever seen. The walls of the hegemony archive stretched up so high she couldn't see the ceiling. Floating platforms carried alien scholars between levels, while holographic displays showed information from thousands of worlds. "This is everything we know about the progenitors," said Krixna, the insect historian who had become her guide. 12,000 years of collected research from all hegemony species. Lisa looked at the massive collection of data and felt overwhelmed. "Where do we start?" "With this," Krixna said, activating a display that showed DNA sequences. "These genetic patterns were found in progenitor ruins across the galaxy. We have never understood what species they belong to." Lisa stared at the patterns and felt her heart stop. She had seen these exact sequences before in her own research on human genetics. "Krixna, I need to run some tests. Can you give me access to a genetics lab?" "Of course, but may I ask why you seem disturbed?" Lisa didn't answer. She couldn't tell the alien that she was looking at human DNA sequences that were supposedly millions of years old. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Torres was getting his first look at Nexus Prime, the capital world of the hegemony. The planet was covered in massive cities that rose from the ground like metallic forests. Billions of beings from 12 different species lived and worked together in what seemed like perfect harmony. "Impressive, is it not?" asked Vexter, the crystalline being who had first visited Earth. "This is what your species can achieve if you follow our guidance." Ryan nodded politely, but something bothered him about the perfect order of everything. There were no slums, no poverty, but there was also no real freedom. Everyone had their place and stayed in it. Dr. Kate Sullivan had been given access to the restricted archives, the oldest records in hegemony history. She spent hours reading about the mysterious progenitors, and with each page her excitement grew. "Commander," she said, calling Ryan on their private channel, "you need to see this. I've found references to a progenitor colony called Third Rock. The description matches Earth perfectly, same size, same distance from a yellow star, same moon." "That could be coincidence," Ryan replied, though he didn't believe it himself. "There's more. The records say the Third Rock colony was established as a seed world, a place where the progenitors would preserve their genetic heritage in case something happened to their main civilization. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Foster was making discoveries that changed everything she thought she knew about human history. The Antarctic facility was vast beyond imagination, filled with technology that made current human science look like cave paintings. "Amy, you need to see this," called Dr. Peter Clark from deeper in the complex. "I found something that looks like a communications center." Amy hurried through corridors lined with glowing panels. Each step activated more lights, as if the facility was waking up after a long sleep. She found Peter standing before a massive curved wall covered in star maps. "Watch this," Peter said, placing his hand on a control panel. The wall came alive, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked what could only be star systems. "Peter, these markers. They match the current locations of all the major hegemony worlds. But look at the dates." Peter pointed to symbols at the bottom of the display. "If I'm reading this right, this map was created over 3 million years ago." Amy felt dizzy. "That's impossible. The hegemony has only existed for 4,000 years. "Unless," Peter said quietly, "the hegemony built their civilization on the ruins of whoever made this place." In the genetics lab on Nexus Prime, Dr. Lisa Carter was running tests that should have been impossible. The progenitor DNA sequences weren't just similar to human genetics, they were identical in key areas. More than that, they contained markers that suggested humans were direct descendants of the progenitors. "Krixna," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to contact my team on Earth immediately. Is there a problem with your research?" "No problem," Lisa lied. "I just need to compare these sequences with some data from home." That night, the human team gathered in their quarters for an emergency meeting. Ryan had activated every privacy device they had brought from Earth, but he still whispered when he spoke. "Lisa, tell us what you found." "The progenitor genetic sequences are human," she said simply. "Not similar to human. They are human DNA. The markers, the chromosomal patterns, even the genetic defects that are unique to our species, it's all there." Dr. Kate Sullivan spread out her translation work. "It gets worse. I've been working on progenitor texts that the hegemony couldn't translate. With Lisa's genetic discoveries, I tried a new approach. I used ancient human languages as a starting point. And the progenitor language is based on proto-human linguistic patterns. Not only that, but I've translated several texts that describe something called the Great Hiding. According to these records, the progenitors faced some kind of massive threat. They scattered their population across the galaxy and went into deep sleep, waiting for the right time to return. Chief Engineer Matt Davis had been quiet through the meeting, but now he spoke up. There's something else. The hegemony engineers have been showing me more progenitor technology. Every piece of it responds to human touch, human thought patterns. They think it's because we're naturally gifted with technology. But it's not that, Ryan said, understanding dawning on his face. It's because we're the ones who built it. The evidence is overwhelming, Lisa continued. Humans aren't a young species that just developed space travel. We're the descendants of the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization. Earth wasn't just another planet, it was a refuge world where our ancestors hid, while the main population went into stasis. The implications hit them all at once. The hegemony had built their entire civilization by reverse engineering human technology. They ruled over star systems that humans had originally colonized. They saw themselves as the teachers of primitive humanity, never realizing that humanity had taught them everything they knew. We need to contact Earth, Ryan said. Amy's discoveries in Antarctica must be connected to all this. If I'm right, she's found one of the stasis facilities. Commander, Kate said, there's something else in the progenitor texts, references to awakening protocols, events that would trigger the return of the hidden population. What kind of events? Contact with the sleeping colonies, discovery of the refuge worlds, and most importantly, the children recognizing their parents. Ryan looked around at his team. The children recognizing their parents, the hegemony species recognizing humanity as their creators. As if summoned by their conversation, an alert chimed on their communication system. It was an urgent message from Earth from Dr. Amy Foster's team in Antarctica. Ryan, Amy here. The facility is fully active now. We've found something incredible, thousands of stasis pods, all empty. And there's a message, a recording left by whoever built this place. You're not going to believe what it says. The recording activated, filling their quarters with the image of a human woman who could have been anyone's neighbor. She wore clothes that looked both ancient and timeless, and her eyes held the weight of impossible decisions. If you are seeing this message, then the awakening protocols have begun. The galaxy's children have grown strong enough to stand on their own, and it is time for the gardeners to return. We are your ancestors, and you are our hope. The Great Hiding is over. Welcome home. The message faded, leaving the human team staring at each other in stunned silence. They were not primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. They were the inheritors of the galaxy's greatest empire, and their time of hiding was finally over. Vexter stood before the Hegemony Council feeling something he had never experienced before: fear. Around the Great Chamber, representatives from 12 species sat in stunned silence as the evidence was presented. Holographic displays showed DNA sequences, translated texts, and archaeological findings that all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The humans are progenitors, said Council Leader Thixmara, a being made of flowing silver who had ruled for over 1,000 years. Not descendants, not related species. They are the actual progenitors who built our civilization. The evidence is overwhelming, added Dr. Quintal, the hegemony's chief scientist. Every genetic marker matches. Their technology interfaces perfectly with progenitor systems. Even their language patterns are identical to the oldest progenitor texts we have found. Vexter's crystalline body flickered with agitated light patterns. If this is true, then everything we have built is based on a lie. We are not the advanced teachers of primitive species. We are children playing with toys we do not understand. In another part of Nexus Prime, Commander Ryan Torres and his team were under what could only be called protective custody. The hegemony had not arrested them, but they were certainly not free to leave. Armed guards stood outside their quarters, and their communications with Earth had been cut off. They're scared, said Dr. Kate Sullivan, looking out the window at the massive city below. Their entire society is built on the idea that they are the advanced ones, the teachers and guides. Finding out that they've been using human technology all along must be crushing. Chief Engineer Matt Davis was examining the walls of their room with new understanding. Everything here is human design. The energy patterns, the materials, even the way the rooms are laid out, it all follows principles that feel natural to us because our ancestors created them. Dr. Lisa Carter had been allowed to continue her research, but now with hegemony scientists watching her every move. The genetic evidence was so clear that even the aliens could not deny it. Human DNA contained markers that were found in every progenitor site across the galaxy. The question is, Lisa said to her watchers, what do we do with this information? Krixna, the insect historian, clicked his mandibles nervously. This knowledge changes everything. If the hegemony learns that humans are their creators, some species may welcome you as returning gods. Others may see you as a threat to be eliminated. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Amy Foster's team had made another discovery in the Antarctic facility. Deep in the complex, they found what could only be described as a control room for the entire galaxy. "Amy, look at this," called Dr. Peter Clark from a massive console covered in glowing displays. "I think this is a command center for some kind of network." Amy studied the controls, which seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. "Peter, I'm seeing status reports from thousands of locations across the galaxy. These aren't just communication systems, they're defense networks, terraforming stations, even automated factories. All dormant, all waiting for activation codes." Amy felt a chill as she realized what she was looking at. "Peter, our ancestors didn't just hide. They left behind a complete infrastructure that could reshape the galaxy overnight." Back on Nexus Prime, the Hegemony Council was fracturing along species lines. Some members, led by the peaceful Zenthari, wanted to welcome humanity as returning elders. Others, particularly the militant Vorthak, saw the humans as an existential threat. War leader Gorthak of the Vorthak Military Council stood before the assembly, his reptilian features twisted with anger. If the humans are truly progenitors, then they built the weapons that destroyed the old galaxy. "Do we want those weapons turned on us?" "What weapons?" asked Vexter. "All progenitor technology we have found has been peaceful terraforming equipment, communication arrays, manufacturing systems." "Because we have only found what they wanted us to find," Gorthak hissed. "If they built a galactic civilization, they built it with more than farming tools." Admiral Cole Henderson, back on Earth, was dealing with his own crisis. Military satellites had detected hegemony ships moving into aggressive positions around human space. Some were clearly protecting Earth, but others seemed to be preparing for attack. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Ben Parker, "we're getting scattered communications from Commander Tor's team. The transmissions are being jammed, but we're picking up fragments. It sounds like the hegemony is split on how to handle the situation." "Any word from Dr. Foster's team in Antarctica?" "That's where it gets interesting, sir. Dr. Foster is reporting that the facility is showing her weapons systems. Massive ones. Apparently our ancestors left us quite an inheritance." In the Antarctic facility, Amy was staring at displays that showed the locations of dormant defense platforms throughout the galaxy. Each one was connected to the others through instantaneous communication networks that ignored the normal laws of physics. "Peter, these systems could sterilize entire star systems," she said, her voice shaking. "Our ancestors had the power to remake or destroy worlds at will, but they chose to hide instead of fight," Peter replied. "That has to mean something." Back on Nexus Prime, Commander Tors received an unexpected visitor. Vexter entered their quarters alone without guards, his crystalline body dim with what seemed like exhaustion. "Commander Tors," the alien said, "I need to ask you something directly. Does humanity intend to reclaim the galaxy by force?" Ryan considered the question carefully. "Vexter, until a week ago we didn't even know we had a galaxy to reclaim. We're not conquerors. We're explorers who just found out we're coming home to a house we didn't know we owned. But the power your species possesses, the weapons systems Dr. Foster has discovered, are tools our ancestors left us," Ryan finished. "But tools can be used for building or destroying. That choice is still ours to make." Vexter's light patterns shifted to something that might have been hope. There are those among the hegemony who would attack humanity before you can use those weapons. War leader Gorthak believes you are a threat that must be eliminated. And what do you believe? I believe that any species advanced enough to build a galactic civilization and wise enough to hide instead of fight might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Outside their window, the lights of Nexus Prime stretched to the horizon. Somewhere among those lights, the fate of galactic civilization was being decided. The hegemony faced a choice that would define their future. Would they welcome humanity as returning family, or would they try to destroy their own creators? Dr. Kate Sullivan had been translating more progenitor texts, and what she found gave her chills. Ryan, I found something else. References to what the progenitors called the test. They didn't just hide to escape a threat. They hid to see what their children would become. What kind of test? Whether the species they had guided would choose cooperation or domination when they thought they were the strongest ones in the galaxy. Whether they would rule through fear or through service. Ryan understood. The hegemony's response to learning about humanity's true nature would determine not just the fate of both civilizations, but whether they had learned the lessons their progenitor parents had tried to teach them. The test was about to begin, and the galaxy's future hung in the balance. Dr. Amy Foster stood before the most important decision in human history. Her hand hovered over the control panel that could activate humanity's ancient defense network. Around her, the Antarctic facility hummed with power that had waited 3 million years to be used. Amy, Dr. Peter Clark said quietly, the hegemony fleets are moving into attack positions. Admiral Henderson is asking for authorization to activate the weapons. Amy stared at the displays showing the galaxy-wide network. With a single command, she could unleash weapons that would make the hegemony's technology look like toys. But as she looked at the peaceful face of the ancient human woman in the recorded message, she made a different choice. Peter, open a channel to every inhabited world in hegemony space. Amy, that's impossible. The communication lag across the galaxy would take years. Not with progenitor technology. Amy placed her hand on a different control, one that had been glowing softly since the facility awakened. Our ancestors built instant communication networks that ignore distance completely. The room filled with light as the ancient communication system came online. For the first time in millions of years, every world in the galaxy could hear the same message at the same time. People of the galaxy, Amy began, her voice carrying across thousands of star systems. I am Dr. Amy Foster of Earth, speaking to you from one of humanity's ancient facilities. By now, your leaders know the truth about human origins. We are not primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. We are your progenitors, the species that seeded life across the stars. On Nexus Prime, Vexter watched in amazement as every communication device in the city suddenly carried the human woman's voice. Around him, billions of beings from 12 different species heard the words that would change everything. We left you weapons capable of destroying worlds, Amy continued. We could use them now to reclaim what was once ours, but that is not who we are. Instead, we offer you something better. Amy activated different controls, and across the galaxy, dormant systems that had slept for eons began to wake up, but they were not weapons. Barren worlds suddenly bloomed with atmosphere and vegetation as terraforming stations came online. Dead star systems gained new planets as matter converters began their ancient work. Commander Ryan Torres watched from his quarters as Nexus Prime's sky lit up with new colors. Ancient satellites that had orbited the planet for millions of years were finally revealing their purpose, painting the atmosphere with aurora patterns that spoke of unlimited clean energy. We are gardeners, Amy's voice continued across the galaxy. We plant seeds and nurture growth. We built this network not to destroy, but to create. Every species in the hegemony is our family, children of colonies we established long ago. You have grown strong and wise in our absence. War leader Gorthak of the Vorthak stood in his command center, watching his attack fleet suddenly surrounded by peaceful light displays. His weapons systems were still functional, but the ancient progenitor stations were broadcasting messages of welcome and joy, not threat. The test is over, Amy announced. For thousands of years, you believed yourselves the strongest civilization in the galaxy. We watched to see what you would do with that power. Would you rule through fear or through service? Would you conquer or would you guide? In the Hegemony Council chambers, the Xmara felt something like relief wash through his silver form. She speaks of a test. We were being evaluated all along. You passed, Amy said, as if she could hear his thoughts. You built a confederation based on cooperation, not conquest. You brought peace to thousands of worlds. You guided younger species with patience and wisdom. You became the gardeners we hoped you would be. Chief Engineer Matt Davis, still on Nexus Prime, watched as human engineers from Earth began arriving through newly opened transportation networks. They came not as conquerors but as partners, ready to share knowledge that had been hidden for millions of years. The weapons we built remain dormant, Amy continued her galaxy-wide broadcast. They will stay that way unless the galaxy faces a threat greater than any one species can handle. Today, we activate only the tools of creation, terraforming networks, energy systems, transportation grids that will connect every world in an instant. Dr. Lisa Carter found herself working alongside Krixna and other hegemony scientists, no longer as a primitive being learning from advanced teachers, but as a returning family member sharing knowledge with cousins who had grown up in her absence. There will be no junior members and senior members, Amy announced. There will be no levels of citizenship based on how long you have been part of our family. Every species, every world, every individual has value and voice in the galaxy we will build together. Vexter made his way to the human quarters, where he found Commander Tors watching the transformation of Nexus Prime. Ancient systems were integrating with hegemony technology, creating hybrid networks that were more powerful than either alone. Commander, Vexter said, I owe you an apology. We treated you as children when you were coming home. You treated us exactly as we hoped you would, Ryan replied, with patience and the desire to teach rather than conquer. That told us everything we needed to know about the family we were coming home to. Dr. Kate Sullivan had finally translated the last of the progenitor texts, the ones marked with the highest security. They contained the real reason for the great hiding, not fear of an enemy, but fear of what they themselves might become. The ancient humans were afraid of their own power, she explained to Ryan later. They built weapons that could remake the galaxy, and they realized that absolute power would corrupt them absolutely. So they chose to hide, to let their children grow up free from their influence, and to return only when the galaxy no longer needed rulers but partners. Captain Jake Morrison, back on Earth, stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Council station. Ships from hundreds of worlds were arriving for the first truly democratic Congress in galactic history. Humans worked alongside Zenthari, Vorthak, and species whose names he was still learning to pronounce. The gardeners have returned, he said to Admiral Henderson, who had come to see the new age beginning. But the garden no longer needs gardeners, it needs partners. Below them, Earth turned slowly in space, no longer a primitive backwater world but the symbolic heart of a galactic civilization built on cooperation instead of domination. The young species that had seemed so primitive to visiting aliens were revealed as the elders they had always been, returning not to rule but to serve. Amy Foster's voice echoed one last time across the galaxy. Welcome to the new age, children of the stars. Let us grow together. The test was over. The galaxy had passed. And humanity was finally home.